Jesus told his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, 5 of them were wise. The foolish ones were taking their lamps, brought no oil with them, but the wise brought flasks of oil with their lamps. Since the bridegroom was long delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight there was a cry, "Behold, the bridegroom, come out and meet him." Then all those virgins got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish one said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise ones replied, "No, there may not be enough for us and you. Go instead to the merchants and buy some for yourselves." While they went off to buy it, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went into the wedding feast with him. Then the door was locked. Afterwards, the other virgin came and said, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he said in reply, "Amen, I say to you, I do not know you. Therefore, stay awake, for you know neither the day nor the hour." Hello and welcome to Close Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. Lord, Lord, open the door for us. I tell you, I don't even know you. One of the things that we used to hear about when I was young was presuming upon the mercy of God. Just starting to believe for ourselves that, well, God's going to let all these things slide. When this passage, Lord, Lord, open the door for us, I tell you, I don't know you, reminds me of the rich man and Lazarus. Remember that? The rich man who dined sumptuously, and Lazarus longed to just eat the scraps that fell from his table, and the dog came and licked his sores. And then, from the fires of hell, Abraham, the rich man, saw Lazarus in the bosom of Abraham, and he cried out, "Please, please, just let him send a dip of water to my tongue." Sorry, can't do that. It's not in the manual. Well, then, if not, then at least send him to my father's house where I have 5 brothers, so that they don't end up in this place of torment. Sorry, not in the manual. Can't do that. If they don't get it now, sending someone from the dead is not going to do it. Sounds pretty harsh. Sounds pretty harsh. The deal is this, that God gives us a certain amount of time. You know, I don't know if this is my last show. I film once a month. I'm not sick. I don't look that good, but I'm not sick, okay? You know, got a little sniffles. But I don't have any terminal diseases. I don't know if this is my last show. If you remember my predecessor, Father Cohen, that was an overnight boom. It was gone. We didn't realize it. And so the reality is that we don't ever really know. And talking about the difference between being foolhardy and being wise. The wise one just kind of live ready. Make sure you're always ready. You know, and how do we do that? How do we impose upon one another the idea that you just never know? We say it all the time in funeral homes. Who would have believed? Just saw them last week, healthy as a horse, yada, yada, yada. Now they're dead. Who would have believed that? Well, we know that stuff happens. But you can't tell some people that. Young people, they can live forever. We can eat and drink whatever we want, anytime, day or night, sleep 2 hours or sleep 10 hours, get up and go all day, fall and bust something and get right back up and it all fixes. You live long enough and you realize, wow, it doesn't work that way anymore now, does it? But young people just believe that I got a long time to go. I got a while. Working as vocation director in one of our high schools, we had 5 kids in one class in an automobile accident. 6 were in the accident, 5 were killed. Man. They're only in high school. They're not going to graduate. They're not going to Florida for their senior trip. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. They're not doing the other thing. And for a moment, I mean, it is the bucket of cold water in your face. It just wakes you up. Just wakes you up like you've never been woken up before. So what do? You go home and tell your parents that you love them, because now you were at the wake and you saw your friends' parents. They were so pitiful. They were so pathetic. And everybody was crying. You felt so bad for them. And then you remember that you walked out of the house and slammed the door and said, I hate you. Now you go back and you're going to apologize, And now you and your friends decide, we need to be careful. We need to have a designated driver. We can't keep going out and drinking and driving and doing what we've been doing. We do all that stuff. Of course, we're going to dedicate the yearbook to them. Oh, yeah. We're going to dedicate the yearbook to them. And when those people who get to talk at church, they've never had a friend as wonderful, as warm, as perky, as beautiful, as happy as everything. I'm not mocking them. I'm just saying it's the routine. And then come 2 weeks later, everybody forgot. We're not partying any different. We're not treating each other any different. We're not treating our family any different. We're not listening to our parents anymore. We keep going. What in God's name is it going to take to get through to these kids? Don't they realize how precious and how fragile life is? That it can be here today and gone tomorrow, and we can't do anything about it? Don't they realize that? No. Why not? We don't realize it. Go to the same funeral home, but it's people that we know. They're our age. Yeah, they're a little bit younger than we thought they should be when they died. And we see people and we say, it's so sad. The only time I ever see you is at a funeral home. And our children are growing up and they don't even know each other. And we used to be such good friends. We need to get together. I'm going to call you next week and we'll get together, okay? How many of you get that call? This is ridiculous. We've just let our lives get so busy. We don't have time. We don't make time to see the people that we love. We're so busy in the rat race. We need to just shut it down and make the time to get together and see each other. We don't do that either. And it's just part of the nature of the beast. It's never going to happen to us. I feel so bad when it happens to my friend, but it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to go walk in work and drop dead like he did. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to go out and some drunk driver is going to cross the line and end my life, or me be the drunk driver who ends my, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to do that. And so that unwillingness to accept the fact that our life is very, very fragile. And you know, when you lose somebody that you love, the one consolation that we as Catholics, we as Christians who believe in the resurrection, the one consolation we have is one day we can be together again. One day I will see you again. I can't tell you how many times for a parent who's lost a child and they know their time is very short. They understand that. And they'll kind of in their, best way they can talk, because they're not talking very much now, say, guess what? Joey's going to be waiting for me. It's okay. They say stuff like that. They live for that day. They hadn't planned on it this soon, but they live for that day. And the idea of dying and getting to be with their loved ones, not scary. But what is scary is when they died in a manner or a fashion that I don't know if that's going to affect their salvation. I was in the seminary. I had a classmate whose brother got killed in an armed robbery. The brother was the armed robber. And his parents were Mexican. And I'll never forget going there with him. And just nothing we could say, nothing we could do. Their son is dead. That's bad enough. The fear of losing him for all eternity. All we could do is pray. That's all we could do is pray. That was the only consolation we had to offer. And we just don't always think of what it is, of what it means. And that idea, and it's, it's going to happen. I love what Billy Graham says. He said, I don't get it when people complain about growing old. He said, it's a luxury that God affords very few people. And he's right. If we've lived a long life, that's a luxury. And if we've died early, there's a reason. But more than anything, if we've died ill-prepared, that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare not only for the person who stands before the throne of God without enough oil as the bridesmaids, it's a nightmare for the family they left behind. And I can't tell you how many people ask me continuously, pray, 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 pray. They're scared. They want to see him again. Don't we all? The difference between wisdom and foolishness is not the secrets of the world, but a desire to be pleasing in the sight of God. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Bae from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ, because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you. The foolish one said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil. Our lamps are going out." But the wise ones replied, "No, there may not be enough for us and you. Go instead to the merchants and buy some for yourself." Hello and welcome back to Close to Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. Now, you can't borrow any. You got to do it yourself. You got to get it yourself. I'm going back a few years now, but if any of you remember the book Tuesdays with Morrie, there's a book written by a guy, I think his name is Mitch Albom, and he had a professor, one of the Ivy League schools. He was kind of a mentor, and he found out he was dying. So every Tuesday he arranged to fly from where he was to visit with Morrie. And Morrie gave him lessons about dying. And one of the lessons that really remains very much in my mind is, you know what? This is the only trip that you'll ever go on that nobody else can pack your bags. This trip, you gotta pack your bags yourself. Nobody can do that for you. And the idea that some people use the excuse, I'm no different from anybody else. I'm just like everybody else. I do X, Y, and Z, or I don't do this, or I don't do that, or sometimes, but not all the time, but all that. The fact that we kind of console ourselves with the fact that there's so many people who are so much worse than I am, and I'm not nearly as bad as the others, getting very pharisaical. Oh Lord, I'm so glad I'm not like the rest of those sinners and that sort of thing. You know, God doesn't grade on a bell curve. You know, I have met some really incredible people throughout the course of my life who've done extraordinary things with very, very little. And I've used this before, but she still is one of my heroes. And it was a lady who, when I first got to the parish, I had to find the house with the red rockers because we were out in the country and there was no addresses. And there lived a lady who's blind and deaf, with a brother who's blind and deaf, and with their mother who was bedridden. And when I was introduced by their seeing and hearing sister, but you sign in somebody's hand, that's how you communicate. And when you're introduced to someone who's blind and deaf, they don't say, "Hello, so nice to meet you," right? This is how they meet you. And whatever it was, this woman decided she loved me. After she felt me, big hug and a kiss. And that became, and she put her hand on, when you walk up to someone blind and deaf, they don't know you're coming, you don't want to startle them. So I'd always take her hand very gently, and she knew it was me, and there's always the big hug, and Santa Claus is here type of thing. Maybe it was my stomach, I don't know. But anyway, she was just an incredible lady. That house was spotless. When I'm telling you spotless, you really could eat off the floors. And she swept the house with one shoe on and one shoe off, and there was no dust anywheres, and and she cooked. Of course, she would feel everything she cooked. You went into her closet, you wanted me to show her clothes, and they were all the outfits, this pair of slacks and this shirt, all of which went together. They were all put just so, because she would feel the difference in the materials. She'd know what material went with what. But her blind and deaf brother grew a garden, and in the garden he had green onions and parsley. And what he would do is, she found out we were doing a food festival to renovate the church, and we needed green onions and parsley. And she came in one day, I went one day, and she was all excited, and she knew it was me, and she dragged me to the back bedroom where there was a chest-type freezer, and she started taking out bags and bags and bags and bags of green onions and parsley. That was her contribution to renovate the church. Now, she never saw what disrepair it was in before the renovation, and she never saw how nice it looked after the renovation. Guess what? Green onions and parsley got Gertie to heaven. I'm telling you. Absolutely. To whom much has been given, much will be expected. And so, when we go around saying things like, I'm no better or no worse than anybody else, or I'm better than those people, at least I've never killed anybody, I've never stolen anything over $500. You know what? This is not what we're talking about. I'm talking about standing before God with the gifts and the talents that God has given me, and giving an accounting for what I have done with what I've been given. I'm talking about standing before God, and He's brought this person into my life, and that person into my life, and this person needed this, and this person needed that. And you know what? I was just too busy. I had so much of my own stuff going on. I was just way too busy. So I didn't recognize the people who were in need of God's love, God's mercy, God's time, God's compassion. He didn't bring it in their life. He brought them in my life. I have to give an accounting for that. And I think all this fits into the wisdom and the foolishness of life. And the wisdom of the foolishness of life depends on whether or not we see ourselves as being here to serve ourselves or to serve God. Excuse me, I'm still dealing with that little summer cold. But anyway, whether or not we're here to serve ourselves or to serve God, that becomes a difference. And it also becomes a worldview. When people are talking about what's in it for me, I don't think you're here to serve God. I don't think you are. And the challenge is to realize that God gave me this ability so that I could help people. And I think we in the church need to ask people to come forward with the gifts that God has given them and use them. And not allow everyone else to think we need to get someone to pay someone to do it or something like that. The same parish that Gertie was in was out in the country, and when we had a funeral, most of the younger choir members were working, so we had the old retired people, so they came from all over. And there was this poor darling in the choir from a neighboring parish, and she was deaf, hard of hearing. She wasn't deaf, but hard of hearing. And so she was always either 2 words ahead of the choir or 2 words behind the choir. And she was loud. And she kind of had one of those voices that was like fingernails on a blackboard. You know, I mean, she really stood out, okay? And we were doing the funeral one day, and I walked up, and genuflected at the altar, and I turned to the little altar boy and I said, "He's really dead." He said, "Huh?" I said, "He's really dead." "What are you talking about?" I said, "Darling, if that woman's voice didn't wake him up, that man is dead, you hear?" And he laughed. But let me tell you something. To our ears, Whew. That was tough. In the ears of God, that was a symphony. She took what she had and she found a way to give it back to God. Like I said, it kind of became our test to make sure they were really dead listening to her singing, okay? But that's what we're called to give an accounting for. I don't know what your gifts and talents are. I don't know what blessings God has bestowed upon you in your life, nor do I know what crosses God has asked you to carry in this life. But I know every one of us needs to look at every day of our life. Not old people. Everybody needs to make sure that when I put my head on the pillow at night, if this is my last night, I'm ready to meet God. I've said it before, and I promise you I'm going to do it. I've recommended it, that everyone who's serious about being pleasing in the sight of God, you go to our website, and there's an act of contrition. And Gene, I know you asked for this, and I'm going to make sure we get it. For those of you who would like, my office manager is going to get a laminated examination of conscience. Those of you who want, you can mail in or call into the office. You can keep it by your bed. And every night, do an examination of conscience. When you've looked at yourself and looked at your day, then you make a good act of contrition. And if it is your last day, you'll have enough oil. If it's not your last day, you're going to get caught short. When people come to me and said, Father, it's been 3 years since my last confession, I can't remember everything. I said, no joke. Me neither. Go regularly. Use the example. Look at ourselves and always ask, do I have enough oil? Am I ready? If the bridegroom's coming for me and got my name on that Uber, am I ready? That's what we're called to do, is live ready lives. We never know. There's no way to know. All we need to know is that I've got enough oil. We thank you for being with us today. May each day bring you close in your walk with the Lord. God bless you.